Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sabine, your host, and welcome to the podcast Beyond Belief. Today, I have a special guest with me. Abeer, welcome.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Thank you for coming. Abeer Ayash, a wellness professional dedicated to guiding individuals on their journey of self-growth. Since 2009, she has been trained in different modalities and offers personalized support to overcome obstacles and facilitate transformation. She is certified in mindful wellness, hypnotherapy, family constellation, NLP, kinesiology, coaching, sound therapy, energy healing, and she is an expert in holistic jewelry. Excuse my French for the pronunciation. But before we dive into today's conversation, I'm excited to announce my upcoming soul retreat in Bali this year from June 16 to 22. Don't miss it. This retreat promises to be an incredible transformation for everyone. Imagine what could happen if you dedicated an entire week to yourself, nurturing, exploring nature, inner work, coaching, and healing, and being surrounded by people who support you. It's a soulful gateway where you can explore your true self. Also on April 20, 21, 27, and 28, I will facilitate a workshop on animal communication, starting from beginners to advanced. Don't forget, the next workshop will be only in 2025. I have an accelerated channeling class that is coming up. And the last one is the Awakened Badass Solopreneur. This is a 3 months intensive course, and the title speaks for itself. For detail, you can visit my website in the upcoming event section. Now, let's embark on another episode of Beyond Belief. And today's subject will be transgeneration trauma. Abeer, please, can you explain to our audience what is generation trauma?
Okay. So this all stems from the understanding and the discovery actually of something called the field of information.
Okay.
In this field of information, it's alive with information and it has the records and the memory of everything that has ever happened. So the best example to give is the work of Bert Hellinger in systemic family constellation, where he himself, as a researcher, as a psychologist, and later as a preacher, who had a very exciting life, including experiencing World War II. So coming from all of this background, he has a chance to work with the Zulu families in Africa. And this is where he really studied the dynamics of families. And through observation and based also on other intellectual work of psychologists, psychotherapists, he formulated or came up with what we know now as systemic family constellation. So the idea is that if we belong into the family field, so it starts with the mother, father, the intermediate, then these are part of the bigger family. This is part of the tribe, of the culture, land, and so on. So whatever has happened in the field, we are affected by it because this field is alive. Hence, it is transgenerational. And how can this be possible? Now, recently, science has, after the discovery of the DNA and what's on the DNA, they have discovered that there is something called morphogenetic field, which is also like the morphic field that Bert Hellinger describes as the field of information that we all belong to.
Mm-hmm.
So around the DNA, there is morphogenetic field. It's like, to make it closer, it's like a cloud.
Yeah.
And it has all the information there. And this cloud is on every DNA of the same generation. So the information is potent there. And it gets activated based on the circumstances. So in addition, recently, they also found out there is some chemical imprintation on the DNA whenever there's a trauma, for example, anxiety or traumatic or clinical depression, whatever, there is a chemical that's imprinted on the DNA. So from scientific point of view, now it has been seen on the DNA how it's imprinted.
Interesting.
So, which means that if any imbalance has happened with my grandparents, great grandparents, extended family, like tragedies that everybody has gone through, natural tragedies like volcanoes, earthquakes, wars, diseases, death, loss, leaving a place and moving because of this having to go through this, so as a trauma, which is too strong, too fast, too big for me to process. And I had to also, even maybe sometimes it's too hard to respond with fight or flight, it gets frozen inside of me. And what the effect of it, how it imprinted me with emotions, with feelings, with reactions, with thoughts, it gets imprinted in the field and now scientifically on the DNA. So now my generation, if I feel threatened, someone who's not, for example, similar to me in the way they look or in skin color, different country, then this is a threat to me. Because my previous generation have been, for example, prosecuted, colonized, for
Or
example,
genocide, stuff
genocide,
like that, right?
exactly. Even though now I'm in a different time, on the contrary, now we are in a global, in a multicultural, but it's unexplainable. So when there is something unexplainable and has no logic to it, and it's creating an impact on me, then we know this is transgenerational. And it's not just me, because if I really logically think, it doesn't make sense. But it's kind of hypnotizing me, as if I'm hypnotized in my response, in my thoughts, and so on. So just a little intro of what it is, and it goes deeper.
Now we know what it is, but for the audience,
Yes.
because I can imagine for some of you who are watching us for the moment, it's like, yeah, I know, or I felt, and I know it was that. Now I get my answer. But for the others who are really beginners in this field, I think we need to go much deeper. And maybe, can you explain? Let's say I'm a beginner in the field. Okay, that's beautiful. You speak, my grandmother, blah, 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 and I have a trauma. And I would tell you, okay, but how do I know and what do I do now?
Yes.
Okay, that's beautiful, but I'm stuck. Help me. What do I do?
Exactly. So let's tell you some of the symptoms that will show that
would be great.
This is a transgenerational trauma. For example, when children are born with disease, it's like you say, how come? It's not fair. Why? There's no logical reason, even if it's not genetic. A child born, or a child dies just after birth, or miscarriages, continuous miscarriages, unexplainable, or inability to have children, to conceive, also unexplainable, no problem, physical problem.
This is
husband,
common.
wife,
Not being able to conceive.
Or divorces. Like all the mothers are divorced. The daughter gets married, after a while, even everything's perfect, divorce. Or sudden loss of fortune, unexplainable loss of fortune, or losing fortune on disease. Being ill and you lose your money on disease. For example, inability to receive anything from life. Like whatever you do, you're unable to receive, and the same pattern keeps on repeating. You feel used and you feel compromised and you feel that you give and you don't understand why. Including that, some people even do all kinds of healing. They do inner child healing and they do energetic healing, spiritual healing, but still they have not worked with the field.
Yes, and it doesn't work most of the time because they didn't go through the generation.
Exactly. And actually, this is what made me learn this, because ever since I started, I learned such powerful modalities that I could reach the soul, the belief system, the genetic imprintation. But then I would notice, then why does the client keep on coming? Why every time we go to the same and same issue? Why after one great year, second year, the same thing happens? Then this is what I discovered, that was missed. So if you have this, if you feel that you're a candidate, or for example, mother-father relationship unstable, so you feel it's exact mirror, like the husband is like the father, or for the man, the wife is like what the mother used to be. Then you would notice that it's a pattern that's keep on repeating.
I think I have a personal example.
Mm-hmm.
While you speak about this, I remember I've done transgeneration healing, and it's a long time after I entered in my healing journey. It took me years before
Yes.
discovering that, like you explained just now. And I remember this only manifested when I changed from the financial field,
Mm-hmm.
which money was coming easily for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to make any efforts. Somehow I had bonuses and my performance was very high. And I was happy. I mean, because money was flowing to me.
Yes.
Then I made the decision to change and entering into that field of therapies, animal communication, and so on, and healing. All of a sudden, I started to be blocked. But when I say blocked, financially, I struggled for years until I understood and I discovered that either on my father's side or on my mother's side, they had many things that happened in the past. It was a poor family on my mother's side, but those people, especially women, were repressed. The woman doesn't work, then she doesn't deal with money. That's the husband who take all the responsibility. And all of a sudden I was an entrepreneur and I had to deal with all of this. Then all the triggers from generation behind me was coming back and waking up inside me, which I was not able to understand. And I became crazy at that point until finally I discovered what was going on. But no women felt good enough. No women were ready to receive. And in my family, especially on my mother's side, because they were very poor, and my grandfather all were in the mine extraction. Imagine for the life they had one after another. And I'm coming here and I become an entrepreneur. No. Will not work because we don't believe in that. And I remember at some point, I had even a grandfather who was into mediumship, but natural gift. And he was predicting the tragedy in the mine, when they were extracting the mine. And that person, when I've done the session to heal my generation before me, because I wanted to succeed, I was like, what the heck? I'm trying to help people and I'm suffering even more than when I was in finance. Doesn't make sense. You get the point? And then he manifested and his energy was saying to me, healers work for free. Medium work for free, clairvoyant, psychic people work for free. Then I had in addition his own beliefs plus the I'm not worthy, I don't deserve, I'm not good enough from all the women generation back. And on my father's side, it was the same. But even me, who was in the field, it took me years before I could discover, and I struggled with finance, believe me, for years because of that stupidity. Let's say this way. And today I would like that you explain to people how to take the shortcut. Do not do what I've done.
So this is a great example, Sabine, because what you're describing, it's called in the language of constellations, blind loyalty. So there are two rules that rule the field. And whenever these rules are disrupted, there's a problem. First of all, everybody belongs to the field. Everybody has the right to be in the field, which means needs to be acknowledged that they belong. Which means if someone, for example, marries outside the tribe, religion, culture, they are excluded. And for example, someone is a murderer, excluded, and it's secret, nobody talks about it. Somebody dying, lost in war, also excluded. For example, somebody doing something unusual than the others. So out of loyalty to the minors and the women, you had to represent them. It's like you're not allowed to come out because you have to belong through being like them. It's like I need to be like them to belong. If I'm not like them, I don't belong. So you internally kind of, if I'm outside, I'm excluded, so I have to come back to be like them to belong. So that's a very powerful thing. And I give you an example also. How diseases manifest. So diseases like fibromyalgia or multiple sclerosis, cancer, all of these, they tell you we don't know. You ask the doctors. It's like this. What do you mean like this?
No, it's not.
So all the autoimmune system. So For example, an ancestor, an uncle, or a great-grandfather dying from wars of suffocated or burned or poisoned, and nobody knows what happened, and nobody talks about it because it's too tragical. First of all, the war, and we don't want to remember it. So it's kind of excluded from being acknowledged in the family field. 100%, the field will find someone along the generation to carry the representation to bring balance. So a very important point I want to say now to our viewers, that life is very fair. And what happens, what we go through is a balance of energy. So the field is energy, is physics, like the law of light, the law of cause and effect, the law of everything. And it's like a wave. So here something happened, it will come again. But once here it's blocked, no, we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want it. It will correct itself through the next generation. So the person, the child born with fibromyalgia and slowly withering and then going to death, representing the uncle that withered in the same way. Hence, how do we know this? Because even the great-grandparents, first of all, kept it secret. And if it was mentioned, you don't mention this. So all the grief is blocked. So there is an oppression of grief and there is a decision to exclude that pain. So we discover this once we put few people in when we constellate, and the person who shows up will explain all that. And once the person experiences this, the client with the issue starts having all this release or discharge or whatever comes up, then we find the story, the truth, and healing happens. And that's a big validation for it. Another thing, which is order, which means that the ones who came before, who came earlier, the elders, they give the ones who are after. So I receive from my parents, they receive from their grandparents. Now, what can happen? If, for example, a father dies early, which is again is an exclusion. So there's already something. So, for example, the elder girl or the elder boy suddenly takes up, I cannot be a child anymore. I need to be in the shoes of my father. So as if they become the husband of their mother. So they lose their childhood and they start giving out of something they don't have and they don't know how to receive. So what happens? Then they grow up. They have children. Then their child will become their parent and they will become the child of their parent, and hence the problems. So now the child of this person who became previously took the place of his father now is totally not support. So now me, for example, as a grandson or as a granddaughter, I cannot progress in life. Whatever I do is so hard to create a career. It's so hard to grow in life. Whatever I do, I am held back because I feel I have no support because I did not have the role model of the father because he himself did not have a father. Hence, once we do the constellation, we bring the family and we put everybody in their order. So just by acknowledging, placing order, miracle happens. Yeah. Acknowledgement of the emotion, whatever it's frozen, it's expressed, and order and belonging is acknowledged, and something huge shift happens.
You know, the example you just gave remind me many clients who told me, I'm cursed.
Yeah.
I cannot succeed in anything.
Yes.
I'm cursed. I'm sure they have black magic, blah, blah, blah. And for some of them, I even tell them, because I feel that's not the case. They have something else. And sometimes I even say, I'm sorry, but you know, I don't believe in black magic.
Yeah.
And black magic is very close to a curse for me. And then for some people, they are developed enough, let's say this way, to understand and start to search in their mind and say, oh, yes, maybe. And then we can start the work. But for some others, and I would like that you demystify this, because especially in this region of the world, the word black magic, the word curse, I think I hear it every day, and you too.
Yes,
I'm sure you must hear with many
lot,
clients. Can you just explain that black magic is just a name, by the way, and curse too? What is hidden in the transgenerational
Yes, I'll
sense?
explain that. It's a great example, and thank you for mentioning that. So, it feels like a curse, honestly.
It feels like, yeah.
The effect of it is, oh my God, it's so dark, it's so negative, it's so evil. Because see, what's happened, I'll explain to you. So entities and beings, I mean, now we don't see them, but we have beings around us.
Like the wind. You don't see, but you feel.
Like gravity.
It's there.
Like
It's there.
gravity, exactly, right?
It's there.
So that dimension exists, and it will always exist. So what we need to do is to create a good quality of the existence, so that wherever they are in our space, first of all, they are not in my space. They are there, I am here, and it's a blessing relationship. Now, what happens when there's a curse? For example, someone murdered or killed. So both parties.
Good example. Yeah.
Yeah. And this happened a lot. Car accident. Someone died. Forget worse. Forget murdering someone. Okay. And let's take the example, because if you go back in generations, let's say 100 years, 150 years, for sure, in our ancestors, one of them has been either on one side killed or being killed. War happened all over in different ways.
Yes.
So whoever is the, let's say, the killer, the perpetrator, because this happened, when that perpetrator kind of dies, or just by experiencing this, suddenly becomes part below, yani it's like stuck in the field of the victim. So that's number one. Number two, the victim is also stuck in the trauma, because now there is vindication that we need to, like, balance has to happen. And this victim perpetrator keeps on happening in the same family by kind of death, being violent, aggression, abuse, keeps on showing itself like this in different ways. Now, curse meaning this entity of the perpetrator, this what feels like this so evil, I feel evil, I feel it's come over me, possessed me. This is it. The presence of this what's called the soul that's troubled soul, troubled, stuck soul in my field, in my space, because it wants to be liberated. It wants to do that. I take my guilt, this is my fate, and I carry it, and an exchange between the victim and the perpetrator.
How do we do that?
Through the working in this constellation field. This can happen, and even we don't know, it just shows up, the information comes up. And we can tell, sometimes we feel, even you can smell like a nasty smell. People say, I feel I want to throw up. People feel, oh, there's a stab, I feel a knife. They physically feel as if there's a knife. So we discover these hidden things. And once we acknowledge that this happens, I acknowledge it, the perpetrator says, this is my guilt, I will carry it, and this is my fate. The victim says, this is my fate. Now this goes back to their field, and the victim comes to their field.
And then they are free.
And it's broken. So now I understand when people say it's black, it must be black magic, it must be, because it feels
because
like
they don't know also.
It feels evil. It's true. But this is the reason. That's why it's a very obvious reason. Plus, there have been also in history where people have misused the energy. So they could create some kind of evilness. But again, unless there is unresolved trauma, this energy doesn't need to pass on. What makes it pass on is the unresolved trauma.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me also a story of one of my clients. She came to me one day telling me, Sabine, and this, when you listen to her, you cannot guess that this is generation trauma.
Yes.
She's coming to me and she said, listen, my issue is that I have a meeting at work, 2 people, that's okay. 3, I start to panic. And if it's a big group, wow. If you don't know, you are not in the field, we say like, public speaking, she's shy, or blah, blah, blah. She has been repressed when she was a child. No. We did the session, as you know, I do transpersonal regression. And with that, we can navigate also, and we discover also transgeneration trauma. We discovered, if I'm not mistaken, maybe she's watching, it was the grandmother.
Yes.
Who had, and I don't know the exact scientific word, maybe you will tell me, it's when you cut the clitoris of the girl.
Yes.
How we call it that scientifically?
Uh,
It's a special name, and it's into the tradition
yes,
also.
yes, I
Anyway,
remember now.
the grandmother had, let's speak frankly, her clitoris cut,
Yes.
because I don't know the scientific name. Sorry. Yes, correct.
Yes.
And this is still happening in some region of the world, but
Yeah.
before it was very frequent.
Yes.
And the grandmother had children after that. Her children had children. And then comes my client. And my client was carrying all the emotion of that grandmother, because when we went back to that famous grandmother, we discovered that that grandmother, from that moment when she has been mutilated, no voice.
No voice.
No voice
Yeah.
anymore. With her husband was fine. In a small committee, she was fine. That's what really we
Yes.
discovered in the session. Even me, I was like, oh, wow, that is really powerful.
Yes. Yes.
The job you do is very important.
Yes,
and people
absolutely.
need to know more about this.
And also one thing I really would like to bring up that point, because I can with you now.
Yeah.
And because it's a very sensitive topic, and I know also that it triggers. It can trigger, especially women. Now when I'm going to talk about it. Miscarriages and abortions. So miscarriages, unexplained miscarriages, continuous miscarriages is because of loss or death and so on. And what's even worse, when an abortion is made. So this is actually an ending of a life. Even
Suicide,
if it's,
you mean, right? Yeah.
So abortion. So it's like deciding to end a life. Even if I know that's a very tough subject, but I need to talk about it because it's very important that when it happens, the whole life is disrupted and that child is stuck in a no man's land, and any children that may come will be representing that child and cannot live life because they want to, and they have suicidal tendencies because they want to follow. They want to be with the siblings. And also for the mother, again, life cannot move on. So she cannot really prosper in life until a recognition of this happens. So it's a big decision, and of course, sometimes it's needed. But it is a very dramatic and critical thing to do. And if it's done, and if you remember you had a miscarriage, if even you know that your mother had miscarried, you would need to do any kind of constellation to see if anything that's not working in your life is because you need to acknowledge the lost child. And even, in early times, children used to, because women have children, many children, and it was common that for them to die and not to be mentioned. So it's very important to be acknowledged, to be named. And if, for example, a woman or a lady would have first child, and then she miscarried a child, and then she had another child, so she would have 3 children, not 2. So she's the mother of 3 children. It's very important to tell the siblings that you have an unborn child. And for the mother to always think about the unborn child because it's already in her soul field, in the family field. So this is also could be a reason of growth, of prosperity, of joy in life, receiving in life, because the unconscious guilt is still there. And it can create problems, even mental health problems, psychosis problems, is because of suicide, abortions, also unexpected death. It creates these mental problems. And hence it's very important to acknowledge the missed children or the lost children. And when this is done, families can come together, because sometimes families can break down. Another point I want to say that sometimes when there's a break in the family, mother, father have conflict. And it's a touchy subject also, but it's important to have awareness. Why would incest happen sometimes?
Interesting subject. I have many women.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I think this is the big stuff. You need to go deep.
So it's a little bit touchy subject, and I know it can trigger, but
they have a false belief about this also.
Yeah.
And I want you to go very deep for one reason. I have so many women who have been abused in the childhood. Myself, I've been, let's say the word raped. It's clearly like that. my mom, and I learned that I was only 35 years old after this happened already to me. And then this happened to my daughter. It was an abuse under alcohol, whatever, but it's still a sexual abuse. And she had this, which I didn't know. She told me later on, before I healed mine. Then we know now, because I healed mine, my daughter will not have her daughter being abused. We understood this way.
Yes.
But I have so many clients from different regions of the world.
Yes.
No exception, is everywhere, every part of the world, they have something.
Yes.
And they have a reason behind.
Yes.
I'm sure it's a generation.
Yes, exactly. Because this might have happened with the ancestors towards others. So it needs to be balanced. And sometimes when incest happens in the same family, it's like the child kind of give themselves to represent the missing one. So if the mother is sick or is not there, or the father wants to leave, so the child present themselves so that the mother or the father stay unconsciously. And this we discover also in the field. So it's a very touchy and it's very triggering information, but it's better to know and to understand why it's there.
Because
to
if
heal
you
it.
don't know how you can heal it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then this will continue. Like, would you want your children to have this? Of course not.
No.
So now when you're aware of it, you can do it. And the great thing about constellation is up until your child is, let's say, 18, adult, they're still you are their mother. You can constellate for them. If you constellate for yourself, and you can constellate for them, so you can kind of help, so they don't have to carry the baggage. So you free them from this load, this huge load. Also, what happens is when, for example, father is drunk, alcoholic, abusive, and mother is the one, okay, I'm going to stay in the marriage for my children. I'm going to stay in the marriage to save it. So what happens? The child, of course, sees the mother suffering and sees the father drunk. Now, for the child, he wants both of them. He loves both of them. She loves both of them equally and loyal to both of them. So the child is split. But what happens? The child will align mostly with the weak one. So I'm loyal to my mother. So I'm going to take her side. And what happens is the father is drunk, the father dies, so everything wrong with the father. So the child, and telling the child, don't be like your father, don't be like your father, like, don't do like this, don't be thinking that she's going to take, for example, the son and raise him, and this will be her trophy, so that because she has sacrificed her life for her child. But what happens? The child, out of love, will be loyal to the mother up until a certain age. Inside of him, he will have to represent his father, who is excluded. So he will become exactly like his father, and turns out to be drunk, womanizer, gambler. Again, remember, the field wants to balance, because the balance is there must be equality. The child, 50% is mother, 50% father. Unconsciously, they will side and love the mother, but eventually they will turn out to be like the father, or the other way. Love and side the father, turn out to be exactly like the mother and do the same as a woman or a girl. So this is also very important. So it's very important when any separation. So first of all, if you have to say in the relationship, do not evilize the partner. For the children, always remember them. This is the best father for you, even if the father is drunk and alcoholic, meaning that through this man that I once also loved, you had life. It's because of him that you came to life. So if that person did not give you anything, he gave you life. Even, the rape children. So you say, okay, wait, what do you mean? So now the rapist, well, it happened that way because of certain things in generation, but now it's because of this connection that there was a chance for the soul to come into this life. So actually the soul was looking for a passage to come, and through this thing that was tragic, but a child was born, life was brought forth. So even if the parents don't do anything, don't give anything for the children, they just give them birth and die, they gave them everything, they gave them life. Which brings me back to the next point, which is order. So as a child, you're not supposed to give to your parent. You're supposed to receive from your parents. So number one, you're not fixing their life, and you don't give to them, because no matter what you give, you cannot give them life. Of course, you take care of them, you be kind, but your obligation is to take this life that you have been given from your mother and father and to pass it on to your children, if you don't have children, to create something in life, to have a creation. So creation could be a human, creation could be work, could be business, could be anything. That's what you're obligated to do. So many children feel, oh, I need to fix, I need to make their relationship work. I need to make my mother happy, father happy. I need to be good enough for them so that they be happy. I need to give back. They don't need to give back. They can be kind and compassionate and loving, but they need to always learn to receive from the parent. Because if they want to give their parent, they're bigger than their parents because they judge them. They see the parent as flawed. And that's the problem.
What do you mean flood?
It means flawed, and there's
flawed, sorry.
yeah, they have a flaw.
Okay.
They're not good. They're weak. They're not strong. I know better than them. Because
Okay.
and as long as you see their parents something wrong with them, that person will never ever feel good enough in life. Because they're judging their parents and they are a copy of their parents. They are exactly like their parents.
Yeah.
Hence, this worthiness, feeling good enough, it only happens when I stand in my role as receiving from my parents and I see them for where they are, standing in their faith. And I see, they brought me to life. They were before me in life, so they can handle it. I'm not supposed to fix it for them.
And this is a very common situation.
Yes,
We see often that. Yeah.
Of course, and it keeps on repeating.
Yeah.
And for the parents who are in a conflict, so unless if you choose to stay in the relationship, do not make the partner evil. If you can't, leave. And always remind the children that when I look at you, I see your father. And when I look at you, I see your mother. I once loved them, and now they're the best mother, the best father for you. Even if they're bad, they're catastrophic, but they were the reason that this child came to life, and this is enough. So I know this is very tough, but it's important. And once it's said during or acknowledged, it just requires an acknowledgement, and it shifts. Honestly, it's that tough and that easy.
Like we say always, healing starts with understanding. From the moment you acknowledge, you open the doors and go.
Exactly. Once you acknowledge, then it's not excluded.
Yeah.
It's not rejected. Then
it's integrated.
Exactly. Integrated.
Abeer, I would like to ask you about secret in the family. It's very common, and I discover very often with my client through session that they had a secret through generation. Example, the father today is not the father.
Yes.
And nobody knows. Or the grandfather was not the real grandfather. He's the one who adopted those children, or that first child, and then they had children together. Or in the grandmother's side, let's say this way, she had a child and she gave that child for adoption. But even 10 generations later, nobody knows that. But you feel, you cannot explain, but you feel it. Can you give me some example or some symptoms of, they must have a secret in the family? Either it can be a murder, it can be a woman who aborted, it can be a woman who had a child from another man or gave the child for adoption.
Yes, and actually it's not just that. There have been a study, and we're talking about the field. So, under the law of everything belongs, and you will keep on doing whatever is required to find your place, to belong where you need. There has been a study that they found by chance that a man and woman married each other, and then they discovered they're from the same sperm donor. So they're brother and sister.
Oh.
So the field had to create balance so that they brought together because they're brother and sister. Imagine.
That's huge. Huh?
Yes. So the field will do its work to bring order.
This is perfect balance, but for the two people,
for them,
that's not.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so what you're saying now is that what happens, I'll give you examples. For example, a man had an ex-wife or had a lover, had a child from her, did not acknowledge that child, and then went ahead and married and have normal children. You will find that the eldest daughter will always be fighting with him, creating all kind of havocs, problems, police, everything. It's because she is representing the number one woman and the unacknowledged child.
Mhm.
Because the ex lover or woman who is excluded feels abandoned, not good enough, wants to fight back, has anger, wants to revenge. The child feels unacknowledged, that needs a father. So the children of the legal or official wife will represent the missing. Plus, also, what happens is that, for example, not an acknowledgement. For example, a wife dies out of disease, and she has children, and then the man marries another woman, and she raises these children. So what happens is that also the conflicts start happening because they want to represent their missing mother. So it's very important for the new wife, even if they were ex-partners, to acknowledge them and to tell them thank you. It's because you're not there, I have a chance to be here and have my own children, and to acknowledge that you're their mother, I brought them up, and to tell the children this, this is your original mother. So whoever is adopted will do all kinds of breaking rules, defying violence, aggression, because they're expressing the disconnection or the abandonment of not being with their mother. And there's a very famous movie also. It's a true story that was made into a movie by Nicole Kidman. And she's a lady from Australia that she adopted a child in India. And that child got lost from his mother. And later on, when this became a young man in his 20s, he kept on having these visions, seeing the image of his mother, even though he knows that he's adopted. So it's very important, if there's adoption, to tell that child you are. Never ever keep it a secret, or there will be problem. There will be catastrophes, not even problems, conflicts and violence, aggression, disease, all sorts of things. And so this person went on a trip to India until he found his mother, even though he thought that she was dead. And then then he felt alive.
Yeah.
All that life he was not living, because inside of him, I need to find my mother. And this will happen, and it explains all of like addictions and gambling and drug addiction, all of these things, because there is this missing link that I need to find where I belong.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Such a powerful story. Huh? What about when a woman had the first child with a man that is not the actual husband, that nobody knows, and then they have other children coming after the first child, and they don't say it. They don't say it because they don't want that the first child feels like, oh, those are not my real siblings, they're just half siblings. What is happening in those cases when they keep the secret that their father today is not the real father of that one, but the tree following behind, it is
that child will be very violent and will do whatever it takes to be always challenging to the man, to the husband of his mother, until his father is acknowledged.
to him only,
because he's taking the place of his father.
yeah, okay.
So until the father is acknowledged, then because so in order he should stand on the mother on her right hand side, should stand her on her left hand side, the previous partner, and she's on the left of her actual husband right now. Once we put them and we say, this is your father, this is who he is, and he has to be told. As long as it's a secret, there will be lots of problems. I'll give an example of also a session that we had that was very heavy and really weird. And we also discovered the secret is that in one of the countries. So the client belongs to one of the countries that had some kind of political restrictions. So the people who were against the regime, the father of this lady with other people were kind of drowned. And the story was told by the mother. He had an accident in the boat and drowned, but it's actually they were drowned by the government to silence them.
It was a lie.
Now the problem is, so the girl has inability to communicate with her mother, no relationship whatsoever, unable to create any kind of bond because the mother is not available, emotionally unavailable, and it's like she's like living in a different dimension. And for the girl, not able to communicate emotionally with her mother, and the father is missing. Something is wrong. It's because the mother kept it a secret. And this secret is creating this. So it is very touchy, and it has to be very careful, because if the mother spoke, then she would endanger the rest.
Correct.
So sometimes secrecy is kept to protect. But at one point, it needs to be addressed with the concerned ones, and to mention it in a very contained, safe way, grounded way, so that it is acknowledged, and a kind of resolution happens internally. So that also for the soul of the father to rest in peace, to be acknowledged and rest in peace.
Fascinating, huh?
It is.
Abeer, do you want to say something that you consider very important for the audience to learn today about this? Because even for me, I'm in the field, but I'm still, for some stories I discovered through my clients. And it's still difficult. Knowing that people who are watching us are here mainly to learn and to discover about this. And what we want is that all the world is healing, especially the past generation, to finally move on in peace regarding all that trauma, weird behavior, and even total life nightmare, because what you just explained can represent, and I know many stories like this around my clients and even friends of mine. It's a full lifestyle. It's a nightmare from the moment you are born until you leave this planet, which is not okay. And I think it's time, if you have a powerful word or something you can say to the audience, like, okay, it's time now. But some of them want, but they don't know how. Or they're still like, oh, yeah, but no, I'm not sure, Then what can you say for that?
So, see, since also I started and I worked with people, and sometimes among healers or therapists, and when person comes and they work with them, and the person says, okay, but I don't know, I don't feel I benefited, nothing changed. And the therapist would say, you're not ready. Or they say, oh, they don't have the awareness. I think, in my personal humble opinion, kind of maybe misinformed by the therapist, sometimes arrogant by the therapist, because the trauma is not allowing the person to integrate. So somatic trauma therapy is so important, and it's something different than the transgenerational trauma, than the field.
What is it?
Yes, I will tell you. So it's known that you can work on that, holotropic breathing, breath work, rebirthing. This helps to bring the frozen trauma in the nervous system through the body, because we do a lot of work on emotions and souls and age regression and child therapy. But so this is the mind and the emotion. But what about the imprintation on the nervous system?
Correct.
So there's a hippocampus, the lower part of the brain. So it's called the reptilian part, the primitive one. And on the sides of the hippocampus, we have two almond-shaped organs called the amygdala. So inside the amygdala is the actual imprintation of the fear. It's the cause, like the emotional imprintation of it. And in the hippocampus, the energy of fear. So when there's trauma, it registers. It's a program. It's a download. It's an app. Operating all the time. If you just do energy healing, emotional healing, it's not enough. So the somatic therapy work involves allowing what we call discharge, not release. It's a difference between release and discharge. The body shaking, trembling, breathing, crying, letting out the voice, plus doing it interpersonally. So allow the memory to come and allow the body to discharge the frozen part.
Mm.
And to do that regularly. As long as you need, then you're ready
You can pass to
to
something
do the
else.
work. Then you're ready, for example, for constellation, for inner child healing, for meditation, for all of that. So some people come to me, they're not even ready to do just simple hypnotherapy or inner child
It
healing.
can be complicated hypnotherapy
Yes.
for some people,
Yes.
especially when the trauma is
Burdening.
still on the surface.
Yes.
It's
And-
still very
And the
present.
poor thing, they feel, oh, I failed in it. Oh, I don't know what to do. And so indirectly, the therapist indirectly makes the person give up on themselves. They feel there's no use. I'm going to be like, so it adds to the trauma unknowingly.
Mhm.
So there is something called trauma to essence or somatic mapping, where it involves discharging from the nervous system in awareness of what's the emotional trauma. So not just the breathwork and everything, but if it's combined with awareness of the event, it is powerful and it's very liberating. And you start, we call reclaiming yourself and building your core. The more you build your core, you are able then, to connect to the source, to connect to God, to do all of this. And sometimes also I see therapists that have lots of opening in the field because they have not worked out the trauma. There are so many negative energies in their space because it's the trauma is there. It allows the opening and the interference. And that's how, when they work with others, they become tired. They take the energy, drained. Then they have problems in their life. They lose money and they get ill and so on because they have not worked on that part. So if anything, do the traumatic therapy work.
Amazing. I had many people, especially the empath type,
Yes.
Those one are very heavy cases. I was an empath. I'm still, but now I'm mastering.
All healers are empath.
Yeah, exactly. Some are more, traumatized than others. And I remember those type of clients were asking me always because they feel drained or they are, let's say some of my students who came to my courses were asking me, feeling drained? You don't feel drained? And I'm like, no, because more healing you do on yourself, more light you can hold in your field. And when your field is just
porous.
Excuse my French. Your field is really full of light. You don't have any wounded part. You can do whatever you want. You will never feel drained. And this is the main problem for many empowered people who pass by huge trauma. Often small, teeny things drain them and they need to rest for 1, 2, 3, 4 days. I was like that. And at that time, I didn't know what you are speaking about today. I was not awakened. I was still in finance then. I was another person, not the one you see today. But if I discovered the somatic before, I think I would heal before that moment. We say always they have a time for everything. But what I mean by that is that many people who are watching us today, if you feel you are still locked into a syndrome, into a trauma, or you say, no, I don't have any trauma, but I'm angry every day. They have something.
Exactly.
Or I'm sad every day, but I'm fine. Oh, my life is beautiful and I cry every day. No, I'm just sensitive. No, this is not normal.
This is not right.
That's not right. Or you feel you need to sleep 18 hours per day, but you are fine. This is me. That's who I am. No, that's not who you are. You really need to think deeper. And maybe if you are not ready to go to hypnotherapy and deeper stuff, you start with a somatic where you don't even need to ask the question in your brain or to go back, because I know this is the biggest fear for many people. That was my fear at the beginning of my healing journey, was going back to my deepest trauma. I was afraid to see again those images and feel it again in my body. Then you put a wall, If you are like that, you need to know that the somatic work will not bring always the memory. You will just liberate your body first, and then you will be stronger to go to address more difficult part of
So
it.
whatever is frozen, and this also, in the concept of constellation, that whatever is frozen, it comes up consumed, finished, and it's done. And what we call in the somatic therapy, that the field is porous. So that's why everything comes in and takes from
It's
you.
like opening.
Opening from all.
Yeah.
So now what happens that being empathic, it's a talent and a gift. So once you fix this, then it becomes a resource, and then life is a completely different thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you start really living afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
it's something that is guiding
Yeah, and
you.
we need to be
Right.
empathetic. We need to be compassionate and loving and feeling and having emotional intelligence and reading each other compassionately.
Amazing. It's a very interesting conversation. Abeer, I would like to ask you, do you have a last word for the audience?
Well, if you don't do it, no one will do it for you.
Yeah. Clear it?
So, first of all, and for people to be aware, my teacher, Emily Waymeyer, that I'm learning all of this from her, I would like to acknowledge her here. She says, all distress is self-distress. So if I'm triggered, if I find this angry, if someone I feel marginalized, I feel oppressed, it's from the root is with me. So let me go inside and see where is it coming from, and let me take responsibility and take first step, and also take baby steps. Nobody is expected to make a jump. Take baby steps and heal 2% at a time, as my teacher says. So, and healing or growth, it's a lifetime thing. By the way, it never ends. People think there's a destination. Oh, but I've done this work. Because, okay, I don't shower for a month because I showered a month back. I don't eat because I ate 3 days ago.
I don't eat.
So as you nourish your body, as you learn, I mean, you spend 20 years, 10 years in school to learn. How much have you spent to learn about yourself? So ideally, it's good now there's this awareness and people are becoming aware that I need to have my own self-awareness and growth. So invest in that. And it takes time, it takes commitment, it takes a will. And now we are in a good age. Information is available. Podcasts like this are available. People are talking about it. Now it's open. It's not a taboo anymore.
Correct.
So now we're in the best age to do that. Help is available everywhere. You don't even have to pay money. You can read, you can research,
YouTube.
you can exactly. So you can start one step at a time, baby steps. And because these are mental things, people say, "Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I don't have the money. So this is all strategy. So take responsibility and start, and then you will find your way."
Amazing. Beautiful. Beautifully said. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. Abeer is one of my old teacher back to 2013, I think, something like that.
Could be.
Yeah. And I want to say, because I forgot to mention it, I'm very honored to have her
Thank you so
with me
much.
today in my podcast. It shows that here in UAE we have many people that we call it light worker. They have many words
Yes.
around that. Abeer, are you teaching what you just explained today?
Yes. So for the time
You give
being,
course for that, huh?
I don't
No.
teach. I
Okay.
just do sessions. I do workshops,
Okay.
and I enjoy it. I maybe later on I will maybe create something.
That would be great
Yes.
because I think people don't know that enough,
Yes.
and they need.
Yes.
They need.
So now what I'm doing is just I'm talking a lot about it. I like to just share the knowledge. I really like to share this, like this opportunity that you generously
because
have
it's
offered to
interesting.
me.
It's an amazing subject.
Yes. So that's what I do, and I'm very humbled. And thank you so much for the recognition. We go very way back.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned, yes, being here in the region, it's a blessing to be here. And you would look around, everybody around you open. There is an encouragement to have this as a lifestyle. Wellness, well-being is encouraged, is implemented.
Yeah.
For self-empowering, community empowering, family empowering. So it's a good thing. It's a blessing to be in this age now and here as
In
well
this
to
region.
experience. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The last things, and this is something we didn't speak about, but I'm sure the audience will be very curious about this. I'm sure it's a fascinating story too. How did you start your healing journey? what brought you into the healing, into the
Yes.
spirituality journey, because since 2009 you are in the field.
Yes.
And I'm sure officially, right?
Yes,
You started
exactly.
probably earlier.
Exactly. So since I was very young, now I understand. When I look back, I understand what it was. So since I was very young, a child, I could feel and read, the empath.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
feel and read. I'm aware of the elements of nature. I could communicate with nature, and I could sense that everything was alive. Animals, they're not just animals. I mean, they're super amazing beings. So now you're an animal communicator. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So, but I'm experiencing this, and around me, no clue. Parents, society. And then when I feel, oh, it's me, then it's something wrong with me. As I was growing, I felt, oh, I'm too sensitive, I'm too romantic, this is all in my mind. So I shut it down for some time because I looked around, people are different from me. I don't know how to communicate with them. I don't understand them. Let me be like them. And it was hell, actually.
Because you try to fit in.
To
Doesn't
fit in.
work.
Yes, because I was, oh no, nobody told me, or I haven't seen that this is something. And then, I grew up, I was the perfect daughter, got married very early, the perfect wife, living the perfect life. Until, okay, I wanted to have children, and I started struggling for having children. And I went through all the emotional drainage and everything. And then there was like a, midlife crisis. And I was around 30, like 28, 29. And I said in my mind, okay, I'm not going to think about having children anymore. So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to focus something else. Once I stopped this being on autopilot, so being a good girl, marrying, having children, this autopilot, then I said, okay, who am I if I'm not someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's friend? Who am I? I never knew myself. And then I said, what am I doing in this world? Why am I even living? And all these existentialist questions. And this is where I started my journey. And I was so lucky to have an email in my inbox at that time. It was Theta Healing. I read it and I said, okay, I'm doing this.
That was it.
It's I don't know what it is, but I know what it is. So now I read, yes, as if I know it, and I'm learning it at the same time. And the journey started. And from then, I started understanding and connecting and expanding in my awareness. I know that I had psychic powers, that I can communicate, I connect to energy, can manipulate, that I'm an alchemist, I can manipulate energy. That's what we do in healing. I can communicate with beings, with the universe. And every step took me to another, because learning doesn't stop. And every time I learn something, I definitely is number one, self-work. I never thought that I'm going to be working with others. All that I wanted is my happiness. I want to be happy. I want to have my questions answered. I want to know why I'm here. And once I started doing my inner work, I realized this is what I'm here to do. And the joy of my joy is to be sitting and doing this with someone else. And hence, I keep on working until now. Since 2009, I'm still learning. And I also, very important for all therapists, is to, as we work with others, you have to have the maintenance. So I have 2 sessions per week working on myself with my teachers or my colleagues or my mentors, as I'm still learning, and this keeps on going, especially in our field. You cannot stop doing this, or else it can accumulate, and then something will happen to
And
stop you. Yeah, then
go
you will
and
have to stop.
to make a break.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the moment when I met you, when you was teaching Theta Healing. Huh?
Yes.
Thank you for that, because it's an amazing modalities, and it opened also my mind in a very nice way. Okay, I'm very happy for this conversation, and please don't hesitate if you want to comment the video. If you have questions, feel free to write. Now, Abeer, where can we find you? I will write the detail under the video, but can you share with the audience?
Yes.
How can we contact you?
Of course. So physically, if you want to come and meet me physically, I'm in Dubai. I'm based in Dubai, and I operate out of the Home of Wellness. And so where I do my sessions face to face. And also if people cannot have the chance to be in Dubai, in the UAE, I also do sessions online. It's making the whole world a small village. That's
exactly.
in the best way.
Yeah, that's practical.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you have a website?
Yes, it's abeerayash.com, ABERAYASH, and I'm on Instagram, Abeer Ayash Wellness.
I will write everything down, then you will get all the detail.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to get the notification. At the same time, if you have any subject that you are interested in that you would like me to bring into the podcast, or anything you would like to ask, I'm very happy to answer your question, and I'm happy to hear your demand. Much love. Bye bye.
Thank you and bye.